A young photographer who wanted to take pictures of the lakeside with his friends saw something that broke his heart. He and his friends would never forget what they witnessed. Tani Pampalio was a hobbyist photographer who loved to travel the world with his friends. He wanted to capture scenes that were rare and beautiful when he went to the forest near the Nagpur River in India. He ended up capturing something that few people had ever seen. It was a scorching summer day that would make anyone sweat. Tani and his friends woke up early and headed to their next photo spot as soon as possible to avoid the heat. But it was no use, as the air was very humid. Tani had 3 friends with him who he had met on his travels and who shared his interest in photography and nature. They made the trip even more enjoyable. They took a local train to a place near the forest, squeezing into the crowded train. They had to lift their bags over their heads, to make more room for others and to keep their equipment safe. By the time they got to their location, their arms were aching. Talk about morning exercise. When they exited the train at their desired location, a little water break was needed. This worked out perfectly because at the entrance of the forest they wished to enter, there were some signs of warning. There were the normal rules such as refraining from littering, walking in groups, and no lighting of fires. However, there were also some cautions, ones that Tani didn't expect. There was a warning of Indian wolves. They weren't aware that wolves lived in this region. They almost turned back. The mere idea of a predator that moves in packs running loose amongst the trees didn't sit right with the group. However, after a bit of discussion, they decided to persevere in action they wouldn't regret later on. What started off as a simple leveled hike quickly turned into one that wasn't for beginners. The incline soon put the young photographer's lungs to the test. While they hiked, having to take a few stops here and there didn't really bother Tani though, because he could take a few beautiful shots of the natural foliage. The best shot, however, was still awaiting him just above the hill. It took them a total of 2 hours to reach the summit of the hill, where a fantastic sight greeted them. The beautiful Nagpur River flowing gently on its way, of course. What comes up must always come down, and that's just what they had to do. Taking the hike down the hill, they were bewildered by the wondrous sights in front of them. They were almost at the bottom when they were startled by a sound that sent chills through their bones, a wolf howling. Immediately, fear was written all over the group's faces. What were they to do? One member insisted that the howl was from a pretty decent distance away and that they didn't have much to fear. So, attempting to shrug it off, they continued down the valley. The relief of the cool water from the river was so welcoming to their sweating bodies, taking turns. They'd all ventured waist deep into the river for a refreshing dip, one that was sincerely needed. They sat on the riverbank, basking in the sun, waiting for their clothes to dry when something caught Tania's eye. Initially, he got a huge fright for when he looked into the bush. He was sure he saw multiple eyes looking back. Looking away, he looked back quickly to confirm any doubts he may have had, but was met with an empty bush. He dismissed the sight as a trick of his mind and got up from his seat. He wanted to explore more of the area with his camera, while his friends were having fun. He walked along the riverbank for a while, but then his curiosity took over. He felt drawn to the place where he had seen the eyes, hoping to find out what they belonged to. He might have wished he hadn't done that. He retraced his steps to the spot and braced himself as he entered the bushes. As soon as he did, he heard a scream from his friends. He spun around and saw the reason for their terror. A wolf was standing on the opposite bank, about 50 meters away from them. But it was no ordinary wolf. It was skeletal, with bones protruding and fur missing in clumps. It looked sick and starving, but that was not the worst part. The most shocking thing was the object on its head. The wolf's head was trapped inside a huge plastic jar. It must have been scavenging for food inside the jar and got stuck. Tani wondered how long the wolf had been suffering like this, but it was clear that it had been too long. The entire group stood in their spots, paralyzed with fear. They knew that where there was one wolf, there could be many more right behind it. Their theory proved to be right just minutes after seeing the trapped wolf. A whole pack of wolves stepped forward out of the bush line and stood in front of the trapped wolf. It seemed the pack was trying to protect its brother as best they could. This led to a standoff. The group knew that if they made any sudden movements, the wolves might attack, so they were stuck, not able to do anything. What surprised them, though, was the lack of offense from the wolves. They seemed to be sussing the group of young people out. Tanny was reaching for his cell phone in an attempt to call for help when something simply amazing happened. The wolves simply bowed their heads down low and began to walk backward. This left the group completely speechless. They couldn't understand what was happening. That's when Tanny saw it. It seems like the pack had assessed the group and saw no threat. In fact, the opposite, they obviously felt they could trust the people, as it seems they were showing their injured pack member to the group. Tanny felt like they were essentially asking them for help. He told his friends what he was thinking, and they all agreed they could see the same thing. The only problem was, how would they approach the wild wolf? Slowly, Tanny and his one friend approached the injured wolf. They agreed that a slow approach would be a safe one. Tanny slowly reached out and stroked the side of the wolf's body. The wolf let out a low growl, but stayed where it was standing. Tanny's friend carefully wrapped his hands onto the plastic jar and tried to get a strong grip. Once he had it, he got ready to pull. Checking with Tanny, they both took a deep breath. As Tanny gripped the body of the wolf, his friends pulled the jar off at the same time. The wolf simply collapsed to the floor. Everyone sighed in unison. They could hardly believe they had pulled off the jar successfully. Clearly, the wolf didn't have the energy to snap at them at all. Tanny gently poured some water into the wolf's mouth. It started to drink slowly. Tanny and his friends backed away, giving space to the pack. The other wolves greeted their freed mate with whimpers and barks. They nuzzled and licked its face, which was finally free of the jar. The friends watched in silence, snapping pictures of the amazing scene. They felt a surge of happiness they had never felt before. How could they ever describe this experience? Tanny had captured some stunning photos of the wolf and the pack before and after the rescue. It took a while for the injured wolf to stand up. It seemed to regain some energy. It went to the water and drank for a long time. Then it groomed itself a bit and looked at the group that had saved it. It seemed to express gratitude with its eyes before turning around and following its pack into the woods. Tanny and his friends were in awe of what they had done and thankful for the chance to help the wildlife they loved. They also got some amazing pictures to share. What an incredible story. Tell us what you think in the comments below. See you next time.